So we've been giving you extensive behind-the-scenes coverage of the COP27 happening in Egypt, and negotiations are underway across there in Egypt. As climate change discussions continue now, the loss and damage funding is being seen as a positive step in the right direction for small island states. Here is Ryan Beechu giving us the latest out of COP27. Ryan, good morning.
Well, good morning, Jason. From what is a really beautiful day in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, you can see just behind me, it's all blue skies. And on that note, I'd also like to just say that my thoughts are with everybody in Trinidad and Tobago who has been affected by the devastating flooding that I've seen on social media and on the news, because I have been keeping in touch. You know, it's a really tough time back home with all the rain that we've had over the last 24 to 48 hours. I am thinking about everybody back home, so I'm wishing everybody to be safe and to please take the advice of all authorities across back home in Trinidad and Tobago. Here, negotiations, as we have been talking over the last 2 days, Jason, are in full swing after the Leaders' Summit ended. It's going to be an interesting few days on the international front. For Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the Caribbean, next week is where we really find out how much the international community actually cares about loss and damage funding. It is an item agenda now. I have been talking to our lead negotiator for climate change in Trinidad and Tobago, that's Kishan Kumar Singh. We talked this morning, actually, and a couple of things that stood out to me. He said, listen, whether this compromise, this negotiation on loss and damage funding actually goes anywhere, it's one thing, but it is a huge win for small island and developing states to actually have it as an agenda item. The second thing that he told me was that a little bit about what Trinidad and Tobago can expect in these negotiations. I want to play that clip for you, and I'll give you my thoughts on the other side.
Well, we hope that all of the issues on the agenda are progressed constructively, so that at the end of the COP, there are concrete outcomes that can redound to the benefit of those countries that are particularly vulnerable to climate change, particularly small island states. As I said, there's already a dialogue on loss and damage, and now we have this agenda item that proposes to come out with a concrete decision at the end of COP28 next year. So we hope that those discussions will progress. We hope that there are constructive discussions and negotiations on finance, which is a critically central issue at this COP as well. So all in all, we are optimistic that, that the negotiations will proceed constructively and that we'll have a good outcome here in Sharm el-Sheikh. Of course, there are always issues that crop up at the last minute, but we'll deal with those as they come along next week during the second week of the negotiations.
So there are some things at stake for Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean as negotiations turn into the second week. The second week, everybody will tell you, Jason, that's when the rubber really hits the road. That's when things really go into another gear here at COP27. And if things aren't going into another gear, guess what? Politicians fly back into Sharm el-Sheikh and they try to push the process along. So it's going to be an interesting next week ahead. We're going to keep in touch with you to tell you what's the latest coming out of Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Minister of Planning and Development, as you now know, Penelope Beckles, she is in Sharm el-Sheikh. As I know, she is scheduled to talk at 2 events later today, one of them being a panel discussion, which should start around 2:30 p.m. Sharm el-Sheikh time. That's roughly about, what, 10:30, 9:30 a.m. Trinidad and Tobago time, and then she's scheduled for another discussion at 6:30 p.m. Sharm el-Sheikh time. That's 12:30 p.m. Trinidad and Tobago time. What the Minister of Planning will have to say, I will definitely keep you posted on that. But for now, from a beautiful Sharm el-Sheikh, I want to hand it back over to you in Trinidad and Tobago. Thoughts continuing to go the way of Trinbagonians who have been inundated with flooding and a lot of rain over the last 48 hours, and I look forward to keeping you abreast of what's happening in Egypt.